So today we will discuss about the three techniques of machine learning. And these are supervised, unsupervised, and semi-supervised. Machine learning techniques. These are the most popular one. And let us look at them one by one. First, let us take supervised. To understand supervised, I will tell you in brief and then I'll take you in a depth of the explanation. So here we have labeled data. In case of unsupervised, we have unlabeled data. And semi-supervised, so it falls between supervised and unsupervised. It has got very small amount of labeled data and large amount of unlabeled data. Now let us understand what does this exactly means. Labeled data, unlabeled data, what does that exactly means? Let us understand that. So related to data set we will discuss now. We have two things here. One you can call it as input, another you can call it as output. So we have two things. Input, normally we represent it as X. Output, we can represent it as Y. This input can also be called as independent variable. And similar way, the output will be called as dependent variable, or it can be called as target variable. Now let us understand how exactly this happens. Now let me take one table, and this table is having some parameters. The parameters are like how a student gets scoring at the end of the year in the exams. So we have certain parameters, and the parameters are: the student gives certain number of hours for study. Okay, so number of hours, every day how many number of hours the student gives. Second would be number of lectures attended. That would be another parameter. And then third, we can have marks. Okay, or rather than marks, we can have grade to make it simpler. Now if we collect data of all the students, let's say somebody who studies 2 hours a day and total number of lectures conducted were 100, and the person attended around 60 lectures, and we found that this person got grade as C. Similar way, if somebody is studying 3 hours a day and this person attended 80 lectures and this person has got grade B, and this keep on will happening. So this is how we are getting the data for each and every student, how many hours he is giving for studying and how many lectures that student has attended, and similarly we are able to see that he has got grade accordingly. So this is called as a labeled data. Now what is labeled here? Let us understand. We have x variables where we have x1 and x2, and at the same time we have a variable y. So in this case, this is x1 data and this one is x2 data, and the y is the last column. Y is also called as label. And now if I want to classify the students as per the grades, it is very easy for me to classify because I have the grades given for each and every student, and I can write down all the records which have A separately, all the records which have B separately, and all the records which have C separately. Okay, so if I need to write that, so I can have something like this. I can have A, then I can have B, and then I can have C. And then for A, I know that it is 4 and 100, so one record that falls under A. For B, we have two records, 380 and 2 and 100, two records we have, so I'll just write two records fall under B. And for C, we have only one record, so one record falls under C. Okay, so this gives me an analysis that I have three classes, A and B and C, three classes, and the ratio in which all the students can be divided is 1:2:1. So 1 in the category in the class A, B has got 2, and the class C has got 1. So this is called as supervised data and supervised approach because we have the output available. So I hope supervised concept, the label concept is clear with you. Now assuming that we have the same table, okay, so I'll copy this table. We have the same table into a new slide, but we don't have the grade column present. So if this column is not present, in that case what can happen? Only this much data is there. Now we don't have classes, we don't have labels, and therefore this is not supervised. I believe you are getting right. So as we get labels, that data becomes supervised, and the kind of learning will be done is supervised learning because we learn from the outputs which are already present. This is unsupervised. We don't have the output, so I'll just mention it here. Unsupervised, we don't have output. Okay, this is unsupervised. Now what will be the approach in this case? In the previous case, if you see, the approach was whatever data point is there, they already have got a label, and accordingly we have classified them. Okay, and therefore we call this as classification. So this is actually called as classification. So this is called as classification. Now in this case, classification is not possible. So what I will do is, I will try to check that whatever data points I have, I will try to check some relationship between them. Okay, so let's say I have 260, 380, 200, 400. So I'll try to calculate that how I can group these elements. So if I see 60 and 80 are quite nearer, and 100 and 100 are same value. At the same time, if you see here, 2 and 2 are same value, and then we can have 3 and 4 as separate values, or they are also quite nearer. Between 2 and 3 there is only gap of 1, and between 3 and 4 there is only gap of 1. So we will actually try to group this data on the basis of distances. The distances are calculated for the column 1, that is number of hours of study, as well as number of lectures attended. And this approach is called as, there is one algorithm which is known as k-means. We are not going to touch upon that, but this approach is known as, we are grouping the data points on the basis of distance, and the way we calculate the distance can vary. People can have different approaches of calculating the distance, but let's say I have pairs and I try to group them. Okay, so I have a pair of 260, I have a pair of 380, I have a pair of 2 and 100, and I have a pair of 4 and 100. Okay, so this I need to group, this I need to cluster. Okay, and given that I have to make 3 clusters. So 3 clusters I have to make. This is the already given condition. So I have to put the group 260, 360 and 200, 400 in these 3 groups. Okay, and these groups will be called as clusters now. The terminology is called as clusters. So let us see how that can happen. I can see that 260 is the smallest, so I'll just put it here, 260. And then we have 380, 200 and 400. So 400 is obviously quite large, so I'll put it here 4,100 at this particular place. And then I have 380 and 200 left. So 380 can either go into the first one or second one, and 200 can either go into the first one or second one. Okay, so because the value is greater than 260, I am putting it here in 380, and the last value also I am putting it under second cluster, that is 200. Okay, so this is how I am trying to make 3 different groups, and these groups are called as clusters. These groups are called as clusters. So here, on the basis of distances, on the basis of differences between the values, we actually try to group them or divide them into multiple clusters. This is done on unsupervised data. I hope the concept of labeled data and unlabeled data is clear. So this is also called as unlabeled data. Okay, so this is how it is done. Now coming back to supervised. So as I told that it works on labeled data, and the example here is KNN algorithm. I'll explain KNN in a different video tutorial. In case of unsupervised, we have example k-means algorithm. This also I'll explain in one more separate video tutorial. Thank you for watching.